Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another review of another Richard Lehman book. Apologies for the picture today. I'm having problems with my camera. Not quite sure what's going on. Just completely black. But hopefully it's picking up the audio at least, which is what's important. And the lack of my face is no great loss, I'm sure you'll agree. So we're at number 11 on the Richard Lehman book reviews list. And for number 11, I did say the next couple of books are quite close-knit for me. At number 11, I've put one of what's considered a lesser Lehman books, one of the books that I don't really see people talking about much, and nobody really seems to discuss it. Apologies for the background noise if you can hear the clacking, it's the tumble dryer on. I've chosen his 1988 novel, Resurrection Dreams. I think this one goes unnoticed by a lot of people because it's a very slight book. The artwork, which I think is a Steve Crisp job, isn't quite up to the standards of most of the others. It's just a pair of eyes staring malevolently at the reader. It's quite a short book. It's only about 300 and something pages, quite large font. The mass market paperback by the Hodder and Stout headline imprint features that you can get these days has very dark print on the pages, almost blurred, so it's a bit weird looking. And the story here is a bit unusual for Lehman because this book, I think, showcases Lehman has a real sense of humour. It's quite a silly book, and it's kind of a bit goofy in a way. It concerns a character who wants to resurrect the dead. And from a very young age, he has plans to resurrect the body of a girl that's killed in a hideous, quite gruesome car accident. And he wants to do this for his high school show science exhibit to showcase something he can do. And it all goes terribly wrong, and it ends up with him in a mental institute, as I'm sure you can imagine. But over the years, somehow he gets released back into society when it's clear he's still a little bit demented and still obsessed with the idea of resurrecting the dead. And he has his eyes and heart set on one particular character, the main female of the story, whom he wants to bring back to life once he's killed her. And it makes it quite clear fairly early on as to why he wants to resurrect the dead, because in this being a Richard Lehman story, the dead come back 100% obedient to the one that resurrects them, and incredibly sex starved. Basically, they're like slaves that will do anything for their master. Ignoring the fact that they're dead and ignoring the onset of rot and decomposition that will set in, our main character. Our main villain, I'm trying to think of his name. I'm sure his name was Melvin, but I can't quite remember. They all start to blur after a while, but I'm going to call him Melvin. If he's not, then apologies, but I'm sure Melvin, the main villain, he's a really strange... He's kind of like... He's not an awful, hideous villain in the way that a lot of some of Lehman's other ones are, even though, I mean, he is, but he's a bit screwed up and a bit screwball. He just comes across as this really sort of strange, geeky, socially awkward, massively sexually regressed character who doesn't have quite the sort of the level of malevolence to do some of the stuff that a lot of other Richard Lehman villains do, and instead he's targeting the dead, or at least people that he can find from hideous accents and whatnot. And he does become more unhinged as the story goes on, but he also is a bit crazy. And the reason why I say this is a bit of a screwball one is like that this character calls himself, I'm sure he calls himself Melvin the Magnificent, and he wears a cape, and he just looks totally ridiculous, if I'm honest. He's really hamming it up as a pantomime villain. And a lot of the scenes here come across as quite screwballed, quite goofy, quite silly, even though it's gruesome and it's charged with all the energies that Lehman has in most of his other books. This one is a very, very silly, very goofy screwball horror, and it's very much I think the Horror Channel that I've mentioned several times has described this as a horror comedy. I'm not quite sure everyone's going to find this a comedy book, to be honest, but it's definitely, as I've seen mentioned, the sort of thing that would have been released as a Troma movie back in the day, if you remember those sort of things. So if you've got that sort of sense of humour, you remember the Troma films and you enjoyed them, Resurrection Dreams is definitely that sort of book. Now, in terms of criticisms of it, I don't personally have a lot. I'm sure other people find it all a bit slight and a bit silly. This is the furthest, I think, into the element of supernatural that Layman really ever got. And he was always better at writing grounded stuff than supernatural stuff. So this takes things to that level of this is silly in a sense. The sort of ending involving an ex-boyfriend is kind of a bit out there and doesn't really fit in with the rest of the story. And I don't know if Layman kind of wasn't sure how to end the book, so he threw that in there. It's certainly not a bad ending. It's just a bit, not just unexpected, but unnecessary. You'll know what I mean if you've read the book, or if you haven't, you'll know what I mean when you read it. But it's certainly not a bad one. It's just not the direction I expected it to go in, nor is it the direction I think anybody else really expected it to go in. But this is at number 11. For the fact that this is unlike anything else Layman's really wrote, I think, and it's a great palate cleanser from all the usual nastiness. And I'm not suggesting that this isn't gruesome or nasty or violent. It is. It's got lots of gore. It's got lots of violence. It's got lots of sex. It's got all sorts of unpleasantness going on. It's Richard Layman. You know what you're getting with Richard Layman. But what I mean is that this is a lot more light-hearted and goofy than anything else he's ever written. And you can't help but read this with a bit of a smirk, a bit of a smile on your face, because it just comes across as goofy, really, rather than shocking or horrific or scary or sort of making you feel nauseous or anything else. This is just goofy, and I'm sure that's what Layman was going for with it. It's a zombie horror comedy, I guess, and it just really works. It made me chuckle. I enjoyed reading it. I read this one really quickly. No time at all to get through, and I just found it so radically different to anything else he's written, but also so refreshing at a point when I was reading so much sort of deeply dark, especially some of the top 10 that I've got on this list are very dark books. This one I remember just smirking and laughing about, which is, if a book can make you laugh and cringe at the same time, and you enjoy it, you remember it, you have a good time with it, I think that speaks volumes about the quality of the book. And I don't see this one mentioned in the same way that I've rarely seen anyone talk about Alarums, which I mentioned much further down the list, which was his sort of mystery crime thriller book. No one really seems to talk about this. It's certainly not one of the Layman greats, as though, and I think it's because this was sandwiched between Midnight's Lair and Funland, which were two much bigger books in Layman's repertoire, books that people certainly remember. And then you obviously had The Beast-Ace and The Stake bookending those two, and from then on Layman's books were pretty huge in the UK. So this one kind of goes untalked about and unnoticed, and nobody really seems to have any really opinion on it. I'm sure there's a lot of people who've never even read it, but for me personally, I love this book. I think it's a lot of fun, and it's just light-hearted, refreshing zombie sex slave silliness. And if you're in the right sort of mood for a bit of a chuckle and you just want the usual Layman-esque stuff, but not in such a dark manner, this will certainly scratch that itch. So Resurrection Dreams for me gets in at number 11. I know that's a very high place. I know that there will be some people out there who think that that's actually a surprisingly high place for this book, considering some of the other books that I've mentioned, which surely should be higher up. It's all subjective. It's just taste. We like what we like. I'm not suggesting that this is a better book. It's just high up on my list because of the fact that it made me laugh. Yeah, and there's very few Layman books that make me laugh. There's a couple of scenes in a few of them that I've chuckled over, but this one generally did make me laugh quite a few times, and I enjoyed it. I think it's a great book, so I'm putting it in number 11. My list, my rules, and there we are. That's Resurrection Dreams. So next up, we've got the top 10, and I'll be doing a video for each one of those once the camera's sorted. The top 10. Again, I'm not suggesting that my top 10 is better than anybody else's top 10, or that you'll necessarily find these the 10 best books. They're my 10 personal picks of Layman. I think, personally, they're all great. There are caveats with a few of them. But yeah, I'm excited to get into them. Once we've done this top 10, and I've finished with Layman, obviously I won't be talking about Layman anymore in any great depth, but I'm going to be moving on to my next author on my list of ranking videos, which is going to be the Arizonan horror author Bentley Little, who also wrote under the pseudonym of Brian Emmons, who is arguably my favourite horror author. Again, comes with caveats. Discovered him via Richard Layman, because both authors share the same initial surname, and I found a Bentley Little book by a Richard Layman book when I was reading them, and really fell in love with Little's style. So I will be talking about Bentley Little once I've got through these Richard Layman book reviews, ranking all of his books currently. He's just got I've been waiting, especially because he's got a book called City Horde coming out this winter, which I'll be reading so I can have an accurate ranking of all the available books. So the ranking itself for Bentley Little will probably start hopefully this year, if not early next year. We'll see when we get through this nonsense. I've still got 10 Richard Layman books to go through. But yeah, that's it. I will see you soon for the next Richard Layman book, which is at number 10. The top 10 begins. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.